She left without her husband and moved her children in with a older couple that she considered her godparents. And we moved in with her. That's actually where I met this light skinned senior pastor here, Pastor John. I met him when
They
I
were
was,
five.
5 years old, 5, 6 years old. So grew up in Manhattan. Eventually, my dad came along beside my mother, and he was in the home. So I can say that he recovered. And having him in the home did make a difference because I was able to see the pattern of a man and also how that man entreated his woman. And I grew up with 6 siblings, so it made it even more difficult, I'm sure, for them to have a good, thriving marriage with so many children. Hell, I got 3, and I struggle. So I can't imagine. I'm sure y'all can relate. But parents grew up. I mean, my parents were in church. They served in church leadership pretty much as far back as I can remember. My dad had a couple of stints as a senior pastor in my childhood, but they were short stints. But all I knew growing up was home, church, school, sports. We didn't go without, but we say we didn't go without, but we did go without. Because in our community, we say if you got a roof over your head, food on the table, clothes on your back, and running water,
Yeah.
then you got everything you need. And in some senses, that's true. But what I learned as I got older was there were some areas in my childhood where I needed more, and I didn't have that. So just to kind of all bring it full circle, when I was about 18 years old and graduating high school, my dad actually moved to Kansas City. They moved back. My parents relocated back to Kansas City, and he started a church that's still in existence to this day. And then I veered off from there. So
So, Miracle, you would say that you went, let's talk about pain for a second. When you experienced pain growing up, how you dealt with it, did you go outward or did you go inward?
I was inward. I would just be in my room.
And how did that affect your relationship with your now husband? That what's the word I'm looking for? That belief system, that tendency. How did that? How does that? How did that? How does that affect your current relationship with a man that's vented, who's expressive?
Well, we are opposites, you know. So he is the vented one, and I'm like, okay, leave me alone. Like I don't have to be, bothered or anything. But it didn't help me express. It didn't help me learn how to put words to how I was feeling. So I would just be quiet. You can leave me alone. I don't have to talk to you. And that don't work here. I have to learn how to, or I have to keep learning, to put words to how I'm feeling and not shut down. And ultimately, it's not helping anyway. It's not helping me, to grow. And then it's not helping him understand me or get to know me better as well.
Okay, I got one more question, and we will cut Pastor Brittany loose. We talked about, I think last week we talked about men typically are not expressive. You got to get a man, usually, you got to get a man hot and irritated, and he's ready to go off, and then he'll be expressive. But if y'all know Pastor Brandon, he is vented as vented come. Pastor Brandon will say what's on his mind, what he think, what he want, what he doesn't want. And so, Miracle, how is it being married to a man who is expressive? Now, there are a lot of people who complain. There are women who we have heard complain, my man don't talk, he don't talk, I don't know where he's at, I don't know what he wants, I don't know what he's thinking. Will you speak from your perspective, either positively or from a challenge perspective? How does it feel being with a man who says exactly what is on his mind, where you don't have to guess and wonder what he's thinking and what he's feeling?
Well, also, like growing up as a child, I didn't have a lot of stability. And so the words kind of stabilized me, instead of me having to guess and figure it out and do all of that. It's the safety net of, well, you know what? If he has something to say, he gonna say it. So don't even go down a rabbit hole of trying to figure it out or taking on other emotions that's not even real.
Okay, y'all ready to get into it? Are we warmed up? Are y'all warmed up? You okay? We made a statement. Pastor Brandon, he made it to us, and we stole it and put it on our platform. But I want you to speak to it, and we're going to kind of dive into some juice. You made a statement. You've married countless couples down through the years, and one of the banners that, especially in church, especially black church, is it is better to marry than to burn. Have anybody heard that before? Some of us, that was the slogan over the over the gateway of the. I don't think that's funny. Being in your 30s, knowing what you know, experienced divorce, and now remarried, you made this statement. I want you to talk about it. That not only are people not ready for marriage, but we're really not ready to just do general life. Will you talk that through and explain what you meant by that and why that's prevalent in our relationships right now, that we are severely undeveloped for life?
I think that insight started with me. When I was reflecting, and even to this day, I still do that. When I reflect on my life and my journey up to this point, I can now, with the knowledge I have, go back and point out the gaps and where I needed something that I did not receive. What I've learned, though, as an adult is everything you need is inside of you. Everything you need, emotionally, financially, physically, mentally, and spiritually, it all is housed inside of you. Now, you can give someone credit for creating an atmosphere that's conducive or helping to draw that out of you, but you're not looking for someone else to give you something you don't already have. And so the reason why we're not really equipped to do life is because we don't know that first. Don't know that first. And as children, this is for children and for adults. When you're in your more primitive years, where you're impressionable, where the words that people say to you, they really do matter because they're not words you've heard before. So you get to form a thought around every new word that's used. And a lot of us have set up under abusive words. And so when you are distracted with pain in your childhood, it takes you away from being able to form yourself emotionally. And so not only do you need guardians over you to help aid and guide you in that, but you yourself have to have time with yourself, even as a child, to process how you feel. And so I asked my daughter the other day, to wrap the question up, I asked my daughter the other day, I said, we was in the pool, and I asked her randomly, I said, hey, baby, when you get angry, how long does it take for you to come down? And so she said about 10 to 20 minutes. And so I said, well, what do you have to do to bring yourself and center yourself, bring yourself back to the ground? And she said, I have to go away by myself and I have to think about what happened because emotionally I'm so overwhelmed, I can't think anymore. So if you sitting there, think back, how often did you get to not be overwhelmed and process what just happened? And so when you don't have those experiences in life, it can leave your tool belt pretty slim when you become an adult and you start to encounter a world that you haven't known from up under your parents' covering or whoever your guardian may have been, because all of us, our biological parents were not there.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. First, I would like you to speak to what happened or transpired in your life to make you be
Well, I grew up with 6 siblings. Let's keep it simple. I lived in a house where, even though I had 2 parents, we were raised to be survivors too.
Yeah.
Because my parents were not physically able to be present. They worked, they went to school, they served at church. And when they came home, it was time to eat, do a little socializing, go to bed, and do it all over again. And if y'all are real with yourself, you may find yourself doing the exact same thing that you saw growing up. And so what brought me to this place of being like real vocal was because I had a family that would say what they were thinking.
Yeah.
Now he's not fanning that. The Vassols, you cannot. I used to hang out I used to just go over to their house and just hang out as a kid because they would say whatever. There's nothing off the table that they'll rag on. Traumatic experiences, divorces, homelessness. There's nothing that the Vassols won't bring up in a joke, in an argument. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. Nobody's safe.
My armpits were sweating the first time I met his family, and I married him. But the first time I met his family, I was like, oh, they about to fight? What's about to happen? And they would just laugh. I was like, oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, oh, okay.
So I have a witness. I was raised that way. However, the wisdom did not come alongside of that as a companion until truly when I got married at about 21, 22 years old, however old I was when I first got married. That's when the wisdom was developed along with that, because I hadn't had anyone who was depending on me to meet their need, but also make them feel safe enough to receive from me. And so I had to learn that through trial and error and bumping my head and running into roadblocks, dead ends in conversations, and really being outright frustrated in order for me to realize that there are, that I can improve this.
Okay. Next question. Why do you feel like it's so easy for people to highlight what they dislike about someone else, but it's hard for them to take self-inventory?
Great question. So I will share this with y'all. Something I've learned in therapy is about 96, 97% of the decisions that we make on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis are emotional. They're driven, they're motivated, they are fueled by emotions. And so cognitive dissonance, y'all look that word up when you get a chance, cognitive dissonance. The reason why that's important is because we have this tendency to know that something is bad for us, but still use it for what it can provide us. And so we will get in a relationship, and a lot of times we'll jump into it. We don't work up to it. We don't have conversations. We usually lead out with sex. What happens is when you do that and you haven't had a chance to really inspect and investigate who this person really is, by the time you find out they're bad for you, they've already given you something you want. And it's to the point where what you want, you're almost obsessed or addicted with it. And so you say, I know I need to get rid of you, but the thing you give me, it would leave with you. So in the back of our minds, we do a lot of self-deception as opposed to looking at things based on reason, logic, and fact.
Okay, I'm going to jump down, but I'm going to come back to that, okay? So what? No, it's coming. But you kind of, you segued into another thought, so I got to ask the question now, and then we're going to circle back. Okay. So what can you tell people, or what would be your wisdom or your guidance on what should be the determinant for leaving or overstaying?
So that's a very personal question.
Right.
I think that it's
Or
hard.
how should they assess the relationship to know, is it time for me to go or should I stay?
No, I think the question, I respect it. I think it is very personal. I believe that when you love a person, you can't leave until love is ready. And you may physically remove yourself, but you find yourself right back there because love is saying, I'm not done yet. And so it takes a lot of work. I mean, a lot of work for you to become in tune with yourself enough to know where the line is between you and love. Now, this right here is where it gets deep because a lot of us have confused love for a high, and it's not a high. Love is action, love is a decision. Love is actually very logical because it's constantly thinking of ways that you can make that other person feel special. And so, how you assess it is very personal. I will say this: have people in your life that you can trust despite what they say and how it makes you feel. Have people in your life because for me, a lot of times, if I get stuck in a place and I'm not clear in my relationship, I have people around me who can help me through that. And you better trust them to the point, and they better show that they have the character and the ethics where if they say it's time for you to go, you can trust that and not second guess it. So your relationship is depending on another relationship that you develop to take care and help you with that relationship.
Okay. Miracle, this question's for you. But it's gonna still kind of circle back. Okay. We know that Brandon is built strong, right? Everybody can agree with that in the room. What's one thing that you have learned about your man during the time that he was healing from his divorce?
Mm, I learned a couple things about him throughout that time. Um, he was still always very honest. This is where I am. This is how I feel. I don't know what's coming, but this is what I am. This is who I am. This is where I am. And then also that he's always looking to do the right thing. Like, okay, I'm feeling this way, and they say this is what you're supposed to do. So I'm really gonna give my best efforts to it to see, if it makes me feel better, great, but at least I know. So he's honest always and always wants to do the right thing.
That's good. Okay, Brandon. Pain changes people, right? Okay. So how did you survive and not become bitter so that you were able to love again?
Post divorce.
Yeah.
All right.
Love again.
Let's assume that we all understand I'm saved and I have the Holy Ghost. I don't have to go down that trail, do I? The Holy Ghost help me. Do I have to go down that trail? Okay, I just want to be clear. All right. Understand that. Now that we got that out the way. Oh, I think it goes back to number one, what I was just saying. I have not just one person, I have several people around me. There's safety in a multitude of counsel. So I've got a lot of people around me who know me and my dirty draws. Like they know me and my dirty draws. And so for me, the pain was actually soothed by having community.
I love some community.
And sometimes my family was not that community. Sometimes I didn't have anyone else outside of the people who have been in the trenches with me for all these years. And so I had the luxury of having a community, a tribe around me that made sure I didn't fall, even though I was stumbling. That's number one. Number two, you have to be honest enough with yourself to know when you need help. And I've wore this badge of strength, and I'm calling it a badge because a lot of times I don't see what others see. I see myself as vulnerable. I see myself as sensitive. I see myself as extremely attuned to people, and especially in my attachments that I have with people. I'm very attuned to them. So I carry things and take them in very deep. Let's be clear. So my pain was really not something I wanted to get away from. I actually embraced it. I said, knowing all I know about God and his love for me, this, if I don't come out of it better, it's my fault. That's the way I saw it. If I don't come out of this better, it's my fault. And so I took my pain and let it fuel my progress while letting those who are around me that love me take care of my wounds. Now, I, of course, had to look at it. I had to go through and be methodical, do my personal work, but I couldn't spend a lot of time trying to self-medicate when I still had a life to live and function in. So for me, in my journey, it was a lot about leaning on people around me that I trusted, they loved me.
We were talking about this at the table the other day about you in your journey of self-discovery during or after your divorce. When you met Miracle, this is, I want you couples to hear this because y'all can see, and there's usually in couples one person who's more vocal than the other. Y'all can identify with that. I want Miracle, Brandon, to speak to what, even though Miracle is mild and she's not as expressive as you are, will you describe what she brought to you concerning your healing when you were during that stage, even though she's not loud, her strength is not loud? Will you speak to what she provided to you in that season, even though you are the strong one per se, what she brought to you?
Yeah, so my wife is very understated. For me, it was all about, she said earlier, like my words kind of stabilize her. Her calm, soft presence stabilized me. And so I know we hear a lot of barking about femininity and, ladies and all of that, and you got to get it together. But there is truly power in this thing that women can do to a man.
I can't hear nobody in the sanctuary tonight. Jesus. I got help. You got help.
Marvin Winans said, nothing can replace the human touch. So just the soft touch of a woman, the soft response of a woman, baby, it's going to be okay. De-escalating, sitting in it with me and saying, I'm not going to move even though this feels uncomfortable for me at this point. Mm-hmm. It was just that sold out love for me in that season of my life was so life-giving. And it was one of the most life-giving things outside of course, my relationship with God, my children, and y'all, and my community. It was the most life-giving thing. So she doesn't have to say a lot. Only thing she really had to do was just be there. And that helped me so much because I didn't need answers. I needed someone to help me cope through it.
Y'all hear that? And so if you are the quieter person, soft-spoken, not much to say individual in the relationship, if that's your nature, you still can bring value and asset to that individual that you're with, even though you are different or why you're different or your upbringing is different or your tendency is different. You can still bring value to and meaning to that relationship, but you've got to know what you do, what it does. Does that make sense? Hold my side. Okay. Now you mentioned, you talked about therapy, and y'all all know that therapy is becoming popular, especially us Black folks. We are getting on the therapy bandwagon. But what we notice about therapy is that with every trend and new thing that comes out, it's kind of becoming a buzzword. And I think that people are getting into therapy sometimes just to say, my therapist told me.
Yeah.
As a aspiring, thank you, aspiring therapist, will you give us a breakdown of what an individual can expect in therapy? Because it ain't just laying on somebody's couch. Will you break down what kind of work is going to be required as an individual that's thinking about entering into therapy?
Well, in my experience, I'll share. I'm doing a lot of dealing with the little boy in me, and going back and giving him what he needs, knowing that all of it comes from within me. And so you have to be uh, ready to hold a mirror. Matter of fact, not hold a mirror, just stand naked in front of a full size mirror and deal with the outcomes of your decisions in your life. If you're not ready to hear someone tell you that was a poor choice, now therapists are good with our language, so you may not get it direct, but someone is going to ultimately let you know that you made some poor choices, the reason why you end up where you are, and this is what you can do to move forward from that. So really, people who don't value time or resource will struggle therapy until they get with someone who's a fit. And I think that's extremely important, is expecting to seek out help. And that may take you vetting several therapists before you land on the one that works well with you and your needs. So be expected for it to be intense. Now, I will tell you this. We all go to therapy for different reasons. It's not all trauma based. Some of us go to optimize. So I'm good, but I want to be great. So help me get there. Some of us need life coaching. Some of us need a different type of counsel. So don't pigeonhole yourself into just needing general therapy. You may even need to do some homework and research before you get into someone's chair, and finding the fit and really figuring out what it is that you want and need from that kind of care.
Based on the couples that you have counseled, are we as a culture currently, is the average person really ready for that level of truth when you get down into the fixings of what is really broken in the relationship? Are we as a people, from your perspective, are we really ready for those high levels of truth without any sugar on it? Just to look in that mirror.
I believe if you are lying to yourself, then that is your sign. You may not be ready to receive the truth. Now, I'm going to say this. I believe the truth has to be unfolded. So it starts out small, but then as you unfold it, it gets larger and larger, which really it goes based off of how much you can consume, right? So there's a truth that I can give you, like Jamise, I could say, you have a job, right? I can say you have a job. That's a truth that you can accept. But there may be a more personal truth that you say, no, 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 no. So there are levels of truth we are ready to receive. It just depends on what level of truth you are ready to receive. And I've learned this as well. You cannot force people to change. That's not a forced job. It has to be a willing releasing of my will to receive that truth, take the risk, and make myself vulnerable.
And this is what's so cool to me on that thought. In therapy, you're doing the same thing that you would have to do in a relationship. You're making yourself vulnerable with a complete stranger, or you're lying to them, but you're paying them to sit there for an hour. And people do both. People will go to therapy for years on top of years and never change. And folks be like, how you ain't changing if you've been in therapy? Because they lying just like they lie in all their personal relationships. But if you're really going to change, you got to be just as vulnerable and naked in therapy as you are in a relationship. Almost more. And it will make you feel like you on the edge of losing your mind, because you be like, oh my God, how do they know this about me? But really, you just having to look at yourself in the mirror.
And I'll add just real quick there. That is a good way for singles to prepare themselves for marriage is to get in with a therapist, establish yourself, and just be honest about what you're looking for. And they will even help you to prepare for your future spouse.
That's good.
I have two questions and I'm trying to decide which one I'm going to ask. Okay. You hit it twice, and I think it bears mentioning a third time. Our culture, just people right now, black, white, poor, rich, churched, unchurched, the human condition right now, we are in pain. And I think that one of the things that we run to bring us healing and bring us aid are relationships. That's one of the things that we gravitate to, and we see it on the news, we see it in magazines, we see it on social media. Relationships are a hot button topic right now, but you mentioned it earlier, and I want y'all to speak to it. Relationships, how will they grow you up? Like what have y'all experienced inside of relationships that have made each of you say, oh, I got work to do? We often say that marriage is a fire, and whatever is not healed, whatever is not delivered, whatever has been covered up, whatever we got out of the last relationship because of trying to run from, it follows us in the next one. Yeah. So will y'all could we undress for a little bit and give something that you identified in this beautiful relationship that the Holy Ghost is in, that God brought together? What is ugly that came to the surface within you? Like, nah, it ain't you, it's me.
For me, there's a couple things that I thought, you just think you that good at it, but until, like they say, you'll never know until like your recipient tells you. So your spouse will tell you, your friends will tell you, whatever the case, After my relationship before Brandon, I was so insecure. But I didn't know, because I thought, when you go out, you're always the finest thing, but you're not. The inside can be dirty, and nasty. And so I didn't know that until I got here. And it was work to be built up, the reassurance piece, well, I wasn't sure. I'm really not sure. What do you think? That is a part of the insecurity too, because you don't believe in yourself. You just like, even to the point of my relationship with God, I'd be like, oh, he'll do it for him, but he's not going to do it for me. No, so I'd be like, okay, God, if you're going to do it for him, can you go ahead and do it?
Put something on it for me.
okay, yeah. And also like the independent piece, that was hard to break, and sometimes still hard to break.
You were how independent before you met him? I know you said you grew up, you
like on
had
a scale of
man.
1 to 10. 10 being uberly independent, 1 being
I'm
a little independent.
Oh yeah. How independent was you?
I would say, okay, my
Mom
mom
said 20.
says a 20.
We got mother back here.
Well, I guess it was a 10 then. I would call my community though and just say, I'm thinking about this. What you think? I'm thinking about this. What do you think? But ultimately, of course, it's your own decision, and I came up with the plan, but I still consulted other people, but ultimately it was me. I was going to figure it out, and I wanted to figure it out, But I remember a season that we went through, and I remember this moment. We was in a financial struggle. I was doing agency as a nurse, but I would get the work assignment that same morning. They would cancel me. So it was doing it to me like almost every day of the week, And so I'm over there pacing, trying to figure it out, And he came in, he said, I'm not tripping. What are you doing? Why you not having a good time with me? What you talking? No, God got us. We cool, So I had to sit there for a second. okay, give me some space. Let me just think about what you just said. And really believe that that's the truth. But God really had to break that out of me because I was, I was like, okay, if I need to go give some blood, I'm gonna go give it. If I need to go, whatever I need to do, just because in my brain I'm like, I have to figure it out. I know this is my family, but I provide for my family too, and I got to figure it out. So that was something that really had to be broken out of me.
I would say mine's maybe a little bit different just because I've been married, divorced, and now remarried. For me, it is not taking her process from her because this is her first time being married. So she hasn't had the experience. And so I'm having to relive a lot of what I've already lived out in a new marriage because it's new wife. So what I've learned for me is I'm really working on being a little more gentle, a little more patient, and keeping things in context. I'm such a big thinker. I'm such a big learner. I'm such a big relationship guy that for me, some of this is like a knack. It just comes naturally. It's the way that God built me. And that's the beauty of this is she also gets to see the weaknesses and I get to see her weaknesses and we get to bear in those together. But if I can keep it 1,000% with y'all, like she get on my nerves and I get on her nerves if I can keep it 1,000% with y'all. So I don't think it's any different than any other household. You have your run-ins, you have your disagreements, you have your fallouts, you have those things where, man, you know what? I just need to apologize because I acted a fool today. Yeah. I came at you. Like, I apologize. I realize that now after thinking about it, I should have handled that differently. But I've suffered so much emotionally, it's given me a compassion where if I do get off, I quickly get back on because I'm just so aware of the damage that can cause and also how that makes me feel as well as her.
Okay. Let's talk for a moment to the couples or those who are from 0 in their relationship to 5 years. 0 to 5. How many of y'all for 0 if you're married or with somebody? 0 to 5. Put your hands up. God bless you all over this house tonight. 0 to 5. All right. Let's minister a little bit tonight. You talked about, Pastor Brittany asked earlier about understaying and overstaying. We are in a cut-off time. Cut-off culture. Yes. Bishop's word for that is he calls it delete. That millennials and younger, we will, if we don't like it, we'll scrap it. We find this tendency resident in our houses. And so when we talk about standing before God and witnesses and making covenant with one another, and we make the vow that says, for better or worse, till death do us part, sickness richer or poor, sickness and health. I don't want to say that we lying, but we're really lying. And I don't think that we mean to lie. I think that when we made those vows, we had no clue on the depth of what we were committing to. Has everybody seen a salt ceremony at a wedding? Salt ceremony. It's where the two individuals who are getting married, they take bags of salt or sand. You seen the sand ceremony? Mm-hmm. The idea is that I take 1 grain of sand out of my bag. She takes 1 grain of sand out of her bag. She puts 1 in mine and I put 1 in hers, and then we shake them up. And the covenant is that we can legally break the covenant if I can find the grain of sand that I put in her bag of sand or salt, and if she can find the grain of sand that she put in my bag of sand or salt. Impossible.
But you know what's so crazy about that I just thought about? How much work is invested in trying to find my grain? How much am I going to discover and learn about you while I'm trying to find my grain? And vice versa. Like, we always stay on the surface with this stuff like, oh, it's cute. okay, we're gonna do a candle ceremony and we're gonna do the sand, then we're gonna jump the broom, not knowing the fullness of what we are doing.
Or how sick of a person do you have to be to pull a grain of salt out one by one and find the one?
My fingerprints on this. I know my fingerprint is on this one.
Yeah,
might
this
be a
crowd can
serial
relate a
killer.
little better to that.
That's true. That's true.
But if we could be honest, we had no idea that
Yeah.
he said it earlier that the person that we did or are getting ready to marry, that there's going to come a day that you're going to say, I hate your guts.
Ooh.
Y'all don't want to be real. There have been times that I just in my heart and out loud, I don't like you. I don't. And so,
And I was like, I don't like you either. So we both
so
feel the same way.
if you are non-married and you meet the person of your dreams, there is going to come a day that you're going to look at that person and question whether or not on that day that you was in all white from head to toe, you was dripped out. You're going to question, did I really make a mistake or not? Because this can't be the same person who I stood before the altar and said, I do too.
But we not factoring in euphoria. We not factoring in our own personal dreams and aspirations, and that we just put somebody in that spot that we thought would fill it. Not that they're a whole human being with their own experiences, their own life, their own trauma, their own dreams.
So you mentioned earlier, you talked about the thing that's in the other person that is our drug. Y'all talk about for the last few minutes that we have time together tonight. For those of us who are married 5 years and under, and even some of those who are outside of that scope, let's deal with understanding with this delete culture and cutoff culture.
Oof.
What are some detriments, first of all, that we can identify that are the results of staying or cutting it off too soon? How do I know when I'm getting ready to cut the cord too soon?
I will say this, just to throw a statistic at y'all. 69% of women file for divorce. Only 31% are men.
You got to come on. You got to air. You got to give us a why. We want to know why. What do you say, Melly? Come on, he needs a mic. Wait. He said because the women predominantly keep the kids. What y'all think?
I think it's worth exploring, but to your question, the reason why I bring that statistic up is because if the man gets on the knee and asks, and he is the presumed leader in the relationship, why is the woman ending it?
Didn't nobody ask you to come up here and do all of that? I'm not about to fool with you. Okay, you know, okay, this is our dialogue, so y'all just welcome to our conversation, okay? Exactly. Okay, so you mentioned the man gets down on the knee. Is part of the reason possibly because if I'm going to divorce you, but I'm the one who said I was going to commit myself to you, I then have to acknowledge that I failed, and I don't want to acknowledge that.
Pearls on, I would just grab them. I didn't got them.
This is really how we dialogue, y'all. So just welcome to we bounce off, and that's how we learn and grow.
Absolutely.
But that's
You
crazy.
know, again, that I think is worth exploring. As far as like the cutting people off, I do not believe. I want you to hear me clearly. I do not believe you can cut someone off that you truly love. I do not think that is possible unless they force you to.
Oh, I have another thought.
Sure, I'm just here.
Why did you give that statistic? You know, you got my brain over here. Okay, right. So I'm thinking about marriage in general. I'm sure that men go through their own like metamorphosis and becoming a husband and a father and all of those things, not to detract from that, just speaking from a woman's perspective. I know for me, like becoming one with him, it felt like I was dying because like Miracle, I was raised in a single parent home. So independence was like nailed in me. You need to be able to survive. You need to be able to take care of yourself. You need to be self-sufficient. So all the life skills I have was because my mom was building me to do life by myself. She wasn't building me to do life with someone else because that's all she knew. So she equipped me with those tools to be self-sufficient. So to then modify my tool belt to blend in with someone else, it was like sandpaper. I mean, morning, noon, and night. Just, okay, am I going to do what was nailed into me, or am I going to investigate something new for a different outcome? Now, I watched my mama fail in marriage 5 times. So for me, I never aspired to be married. Like, I didn't have no fairy tale, oh my God, I'm going to get married and it's going to be like on the beach. That just was never a reality for me because I didn't think it worked because I watched it fail. So when I got inside of marriage, I said, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to give it my all. So I was like in internal conflict because wanting to give it all meant that I had to die to what I knew. So it was a tug of war to the point that I was like, this is going to drive me crazy. Let me go get some help because this, trying to do it on my own, is literally on the inside making me feel crazy. So I'm wondering if women ended because of that internal battle. Because I'm like, like some people come to the relationship with this dream is going to be, but just the reality of what it takes to sustain a healthy marriage, it's a lot.
Okay, Pastor B, give us, why should we not end it early? If I'm the first 5 years, y'all know this, first 5 years are the storm stage. Tell us what happens in that first 5 years.
Yeah, so in the first 5 years, you can expect every natural disaster that you can think of in the first, and it can even be longer than that, but studies show averages about 5 years. You're gonna have every argument you can have, you're gonna have every disagreement, every fight. It's just gonna be a lot of turbulence, and it's off-putting when you go through it because we are taught through our entertainment, our education, our households that being in love is a dream. Yeah. But you find out quickly that it's a nightmare to begin.
Yeah, it can become a dream.
It can become a dream with the work that you put in. But I wanted to circle back on what you were saying. If you don't have the paternal factor to bond with, a father, a male father figure to bond with as a young lady, paternal, you don't have a pattern.
Right.
Mothers teach you how to matter. So I'm going to do things that make me matter. Yeah. The father gives you the pattern to make you matter. So if you don't have a strategy to go along with what you were taught, then you're going to be ill-equipped. So when you met John, John had to, y'all excuse me for the metaphor, but he had to father you and husband you.
Oh, absolutely.
Explain.
Absolutely.
Y'all see what he just did right there? Y'all didn't catch.
So he had to father me in the sense of I didn't have a father present like that. So I was used to my father showing up once, maybe twice a year, going to show me off to his friends, buy me a lot of stuff, and then drop me off at home. So it really made me resent people that tried to buy my love. Like, don't give me gifts. My love language is quality time. Because to me, if I matter, you're going to give me your time. Because that's a currency you ain't never getting back. I tell my kids that all the time. Take care of your time, because once you use it, you never getting it back. So if I give somebody my time, I'm showing you how much I love you, because there's so many other things that we could be doing with our time, right? So in our relationship, he had to father me because I just lacked that. So even as he began to like implement, as Brandon said, patterns in our marriage, like our first argument, y'all, was about bills. John said, I'll pay all the bills. Just when you get your check, buy groceries. I lost it. Like when I say lost it, it sounds crazy even coming out of my mouth now. But I was just like, you ain't about to tell me what to do with my money. You ain't my daddy. You ain't. But he literally was just trying to set a cadence for our life. So I'm thinking about that like as an adult, and I'm like, dang, all he wanted me to do was buy groceries, just groceries. Like even with inflation, that's a great deal. All you got to do is buy groceries. You paying car payments, insurance, phone bills, electric, gas, rent. And when I say he was looking at me like, what is the problem? Like, why is this? I thought this was a great idea. But because I lacked that stability prior to, it was a trigger to the thing that had been fortified in me. You need to be independent. Oh, so you're trying to take my independence. Now you want to tell me what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. It was like I lacked reason. I was taught life skills, but I didn't know how to sit down and just reason with someone to establish a pathway. Now, I wanted him to give me vision, but didn't know how to receive it. Ain't that crazy? It was like, oh, I guess he is shaping our world, and that's what I asked. But when he started doing it, it felt so uncomfortable and foreign that it was like, no! You know how a toddler throw a fit because they don't know what the right, that's literally what we do as adults when we start fussing and screaming and fighting and know you're going to hear me, I'm going to be heard. That's what we're doing.
That's good. I say that just to finish my thought. You should be built to be a builder.
Right.
That you should be built to be a builder. And so what you lack, your upbringing, is going to expose you as an adult.
Did y'all hear that? Did everybody hear that? So are you saying that the broken boy or the broken girl on the inside of us, wherever he or she is not healed at, that's what's coming to the surface in our relationship?
Yeah, in fact, I'll take it a step further. So that little boy or little girl in you, the more they hide, the more you feel out of sync.
Explain that.
So I'll give you an example. Let's say I get my hair cut and my wife don't compliment me. But the little boy has always wanted to be seen. Now she don't know this exchange is happening in my mind. What we do is we get frustrated. And even if you communicated it to your partner, they still might not get it. You could talk to them about it, they still might not get it. But we get frustrated and we shut down. Rather than continuing to say, you know what? I really needed the compliment. Now, if the other person is immature, they're going to say, well, why do you need a compliment every time you get your hair cut?
Same ugly haircut you get every two.
Yeah, the same jacked up haircut John Rouse give you every, no, I'm kidding.
Shots fired.
But watch this right here. Your partner just missed an opportunity to be a part of your healing.
Yeah.
And so we can't be so simple that we are always dismissing the person's need when it comes up, that we can't see it as an opportunity to invest in them.
Right.
And you can't, tell me if I'm lying, then we're going to say this and we're going to open the floor for questions. Can I give that to her if I don't possess it? If it wasn't given to me? So in our relationship, we're seeing this turbulence, and we are, because I'm not getting what I'm not getting my itch scratch in this relationship. It ain't hitting on what I got in it to hit on. We're apt to leave it, not understanding that I've got to give someone has to give what the other person needs and vice versa.
That's excellent. And I think that goes right back to what I was saying. Everything we need is inside of us. But if you haven't met that need yourself, you cannot meet it for another. Because you don't, it's like giving Grace a gun. Like that gun is safe in the right hands, but it's not safe in hers. Yeah. And so that's the same way with our partners.
Okay, last point, and we're done. What ends up happening when what he's describing is not solidified, we end up leaving one relationship to get into another, only to find out that it wasn't the other person. Yeah. It was that little boy, that little girl that was crying out. Yeah. Does that make sense? So, okay, I say one more. This is the last one.
He's a pastor. It's his third close.
How do we know? Give us an indication that that little boy or that little girl, because I think that we're putting the blame on the individual that we're with. Right. That in our friendships, with our coworkers, whoever's in this room, we have the tendency to go external first rather than internal. Right. So give us an example, either one of y'all, give us an example of what that looks like, that little boy is or that little girl is screaming. What does that look like?
He gets to be accepted by someone which he did not get when you were that age. And so he doesn't have a pressing need anymore, and you feel comfortable with it. For example, like, y'all see my wife, right? Y'all see me, right? Do y'all know I curl up in her arms like a little boy?
Say it one more time, because I get somebody get delivered.
In my little petite wife's arms like a little boy, and she will rub my back or rub my head, and she will whisper soft little nothings to me. And so I get to be the little boy that's seen, and I don't have to be ashamed of him. It's when you don't feel ashamed when that inner child is being accepted and seen by someone.
Yeah, that's good.
You just said a mouthful. Yeah. Now you can if so they present. You would think, just based on looking, Miracle and Brandon, but you can't do what he just said if you are full of shame.
Yeah.
If I need to lay my head on the titties as a resting place, that's what they're there for. My muscles are to protect her. That's what they're there for. Craig, I can hear my heart beating. The Smokey said, that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Right.
So we're in homes and households and with community where she's saying we have it around us, right, but we're not utilizing it because the enemy, the voice on the enemy, the voice inside of us, the enemy is saying, don't use that, don't use that, right, don't use that, don't use that. But you got it right there at your disposal. So we're leaving relationships that God has not released us from. We're leaving cities and demographics trying to find something that's right there in the same room with you, but both parties are full of shame. I got what you want.
If I can add this, almost every expression of anger is actually just shame that's been touched.
Ooh. You should just say it one more time to make sure everybody heard you.
Almost every expression of anger is just shame that's been touched.
Mighty God. Mighty God.
Okay, everybody take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath out. Oh, Drees is first. Come on. Come on to the mic. We want to hear you online. If you got a question,
drop bars on us.
I need you to pull your notes out. We got 15 minutes. We got 15 minutes. This is good.
Okay, so if you're saying that the other person has, like she can touch that little boy in you, right? But what if she was designed, if you know that's what you need, but she doesn't have it to give to you, what do you do with that?
Yes.
Get on the mic. Get on the mic.
I was going to say, I know what to do with it. I would say, but are you willing to accept that? Like if you want, like Dad would say, you've been loved like this. but this person only be in love like this, but this all they have to give to you. So how do you expect, you have to accept it?
It's possible you made a mistake.
Oh,
And the reason why I say that is because I'm sure y'all have all heard this verse, don't be unequally yoked, right? They're using an agricultural metaphor for two oxes
Come
being
on.
in a yoke. If you marry one that is weaker, then the one that is stronger will always feel slighted because it's unequally distributed weight.
And the weaker one is gonna always feel like they're getting drug along, but they should have never been together. I can't hear.
But if to that point, y'all listening? If let's say we chose wrong, but if they had something that could meet a need, or I just believe, if they were unlike the moon, if they was dragging that wagon,
I'm not about.
I said what I said. So sometimes how we choose wrong is that we're not taking an accurate inventory soberly of this individual's capacity.
Come on.
We're choosing off of, now I thought I had this thought at work today. In our culture, not anybody in this room, but in our culture, we'll hook up with somebody after meeting them at the club, at the bar, faster than we'll decide on what church we're going to join. So you'll go to a church and date it, and I'm gonna see what I don't like. Praise and worship is all right. We'll give it a B, give it a C. But you meet somebody, you've done it before, and just hooked up. Teenage year, just hooked up. Wow. All right, that's all I want to say. Okay, any other questions? Yes. No blood test, no DNA, no family history.
Ooh, Jesus.
You don't want to check the medicine cabinet. You want to see what kind of mental health, just because it's easy to get into, but it's a booger to get out of. Come on, Hair. You say something. Give us a question.
Okay, so I have 2 questions.
Is the mic on? Okay, I think it's on now.
Okay, so I have 2 questions, both for Pastor Brennan. So, number 1, how do you define the difference between not wanting to get married again because of past relationships versus just being content and okay with not being in a relationship again? That's question number 1.
And what was your first part of that question? How do you do what between the two?
Define the difference of not wanting to, either not wanting to be in a relationship because of past relationships, or just being content with not being in another relationship.
So if I can go Bible, the Bible says that it's not good for man to be alone. And so if I can be 100% honest with you, there's only very specific reasons why when you are in God's kingdom that you would not be in a romantic relationship. There's only very specific reasons why. Now, your choice, whether or not you want to be in that relationship, is your choice. And sometimes that's simply what it is. You don't want to, and that's okay too. But it doesn't always mean that you're bitter or that you're harboring ill feelings as to why you're not in another relationship. So I think I'm answering your question, but if you don't have a desire to be married, those are usually seasonal and they're for very specific reasons.
Okay. And then my second question is, being divorced and remarried, do you feel like they're what specifically they talk about, hating each other, butting heads, all of that? Do you believe with the right work in your single season, you can avoid that before you get remarried?
If you choose right. Because you'll want to find someone that you can connect with on your level. And that's what we don't have the patience for, is sifting through the hangers in the store until you find the one that fits you right. And so I say, when you do actual work on your emotions, your mental, you're more protective of that progress. And so it should make you more discerning and choosy with who you deal with romantically. So, yes, you can if you choose right. If you enter into the same cycle that we've been in the past, where we get with someone and it doesn't work out, then you may go through the same thing again. And that is the worst feeling in the world, when you feel yourself circling the same mountain you've been around. It's a terrible feeling. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you said not to be unequally yoked, but how are we defining being unequally yoked in somebody who hasn't just met what God has called for them? I don't know if I'm making sense. So like, yeah, like how are we like kind of like define, like how are we trying to navigate that? Like how do we know, oh, this person is not for me and I need to break them off because we are unequally yoked and I feel like I'm carrying the weight, versus no, they haven't, they're whatever.
Underdeveloped.
What the person who is underdeveloped does is they put themselves at the mercy of the stronger individual. So you really barely have a choice in the matter, because it's them that's saying, I'm shouldering too much of the load. So their problem is with the underdeveloped person. The underdeveloped person is actually reaping the benefit, but resenting it because they got to keep hearing it from the ox that's stronger. So you like receiving the benefit of it, but you get to a point where you say, if I got to hear it every time I receive it, then I don't want it either. So it's a lot of yokes sitting in fields right now because the ox said, you can have this.
Yeah, it's yours.
So answer your question another one. I'm going to give you two answers. The other answer to that is the ox that's underdeveloped, and I don't know, we just don't stick with the metaphor. The ox that's underdeveloped, if they themselves don't see it as an issue, it'll never change.
We got, come on, Whip. I mean, Zipporah.
Great questions.
This is for Pastor Britt, or, you know.
Okay.
Okay, so she was saying that marriage was hard for her because you grew up having to be independent. So what if it was like vice versa? Like you didn't grow up to be independent, you always had someone to depend on or could count on having what you need. Even if you didn't get it yourself, what would it look like when entering into a relationship?
Well, what I would think it would look like, because I don't know, because that is not what I lived. I feel like it would have been easier for me to submit to his leadership because I was already used to being under leadership.
Okay.
So if you are already used to someone guiding your path, when you marry someone and they say, okay, we need to go left, you're less likely to be like, well, why are we turning left? I mean, that tree over there to the right look nice. Why don't we just go that way? And then we're pulling in opposite directions, which is causing friction in the relationship.
So for you, in that scenario that she gave, it is imperative, and for those of you who have not, Bishop talked about, what's the phrase he used? If you've been bitten by love, if you haven't been bitten by love, it is so imperative that you choose someone who has sense, that will not take that naivety and that youthful and use it against you,
Right.
or use your nature against you. So in your selection, he talked about sifting through. One of the beautiful things about community is that if I'm dating, when I brought Brittany to Bishop, I didn't bring Brittany to Brandon. He didn't have a prophetic eye real strong.
He wasn't in Tulsa yet, in his defense. He still lived in Kansas.
I brought my girlfriend. When you tipping and dipping, you ain't gonna bring a booger to church. Some of y'all got a friend right now that you won't bring them under the eye of the Lord who can see. You just keep them in the dark. And then when they break your heart, then you come at you at the altar asking God to put your heart back together. But if you would have brought him or her and let them sit in front of the firing squad, in front of someone who had some sense, they would say, baby, young man, young sir, this ain't no good right here. They come from bad stock. And somebody said, yeah, I wish I would. So that is why it's so important for you to have, come on, Zip, to have God community so that they can look into that individual with unbiased. Bishop, I brought Brittany to Bishop and I said, judge it. He said, that one right there.
That ain't what he said.
That ain't what he said. But I was just bringing her around.
First of all, he didn't intentionally bring me around. We were supposed to go on a date, and he said, I gotta cancel. I gotta play at
This
church
is my
tonight.
story.
And I said, you know what? I'll come to church because I wanted to know what he was a part of because I had been in enough foolishness. I said, we ain't gonna keep playing these games. Let me go see what you really a part of and if I can get with it.
But he saw her, and then let you do. He saw her. This is 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. I was underdeveloped. She was underdeveloped. I come from crazy. She come from crazy. But he saw 17 years into our future and said, that's the one for you.
Yeah.
All of her unrefinedness, all of her, you're going to need all of that for where you're going. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to save y'all some.
Okay, let me just say one more thing about unequally yoked, y'all, because we were talking about this. I showed him this clip because, you know, everybody says unequally yoked and they all want to give their own definition. But it really is about like oxen being yoked, like Brandon said. They said if you get with someone that has the exact same strengths as you and the exact same weaknesses, you're going to still veer off. So if my right leg is strong and his right leg is strong, we headed to the right. We can't stay on the path. If my left leg is strong and his left leg is strong, we're going to veer that way. But if my right leg is strong and his left leg is strong, we're going to stay straight. And what should happen in the process is I learn from him how he got that leg strong so I can build this one strong. And he learns from me how I got this leg strong so he can build his strong and we can stay on the path. All right, go ahead and ask your question. I just had to get that off my chest.
Good evening. My question is, what does it look like to have your own identity in your marriage? And the reason why I ask is because I don't want to be selfish. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like?
You want to go? Okay. So we normally pull out the scripture where it says, wives, submit to your husband. Mm-hmm. But if you read the full thought, it says submit one to another. Mm-hmm. So because I'm submitted to him, I let him lead. Mm-hmm. And because he's submitted to me, he'll listen to my thoughts, my aspirations, my dreams, and he pushes me in those. Well, what do you want to do? And there was a season where I didn't have an answer for that. He was like, Brittany, what do you want? I didn't know. Because I had done so much dying, okay, listen, that was literally me. I was like, he's looking like, why are you crying? Because I really didn't know. I died to myself, but I didn't let God reveal that identity. I just was like, oh, okay, I guess gotta die, let me die. Mm-hmm. But God still has purpose. Even in a marriage, we both have a purpose. Mm-hmm. Our purposes complement each other, but we still have purpose. Mm-hmm. And what I do, he doesn't do. What he does, I don't do. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Like our administration is completely different, but they marry so well together. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to disappear because you get married. Mm-hmm. I will say there is a season of stripping and dying. Yes. But it's really God revealing his true purpose and identity for you if you let him do it. Okay, go ahead.
That's excellent. You got that? Let me read this for you real quick, okay? Z?
Yes, sir.
Enmeshment is a description of a relationship between two or more people in which personal boundaries are permeable and unclear. This often happens on an emotional level in which two people feel each other's emotions, or when one person becomes emotionally escalated and the other family member does as well. So, let me give you an example. Mm-hmm. This building, if it didn't have walls, what would it be?
Not a building.
Just a building, right?
Yeah.
But no rooms, no boundaries, no walls. Mm-hmm. That's what happens when you bring yourself into a relationship and you have not learned how to manage your own emotions.
Yeah.
So I think it's less an identity issue and more that you guys are pinging off each other's emotions and not taking time for yourself to figure out what you feel
Yeah.
That's good.
as an individual apart from what he feels as an individual. This can be very difficult because what I heard in your question was a guilt that you carry about wanting to operate individually as opposed to always being enmeshed in his emotions or in your emotions. And so it's going to be difficult for you because you have to start using a word that you think is a cuss word, and that's no.
Okay. Yes, sir.
And no is a complete sentence.
Ask God for wisdom with your
Right.
no.
Right.
Okay.
That should be your God, give me wisdom with my no. Because there are times where the no can be destructive. You don't want to destroy, you want to build.
Yes.
So ask God for help with your no, and I also encourage you to seek out a therapist like I have.
Absolutely. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Okay, we're done unless you got one more question.
Any other questions?
One more. Somebody said, no, they ain't got time for my. Krista, come on. Krista, you got a question? I'm sorry. Krista's got one. Then we'll be done.
Okay, I'm a little nervous. Okay, this is for Pastor Brandon though. My question is basically was saying like if you're not healed, like the inner child in you is not healed, will affect like your relationship or marriage going into it.
100%. 100%. So we mostly meet each other as adults, but behaviorally we're children. And so can you imagine two kids being married?
Money and cars and
Money, cars, sharp knives, silverware. Can you imagine? You don't have to imagine because it's a reality.
blocking each other every other day.
I don't believe in all of that.
So to answer your question, yes, ma'am, you certainly can. And for those of you who are hearing something new tonight, don't just let it be new information. Go home, study what we're saying,
Yes.
study it for yourself, and put some of these tools into action. Because we can talk till we're blue in our face, but it won't help until you take it to help you.
Did y'all enjoy this? Will y'all give Miracle and